Destiny Gilliam here from the Creative Reading Coach, and I have a special guest with me. I have Miss Nova Jean. She's with me today because the other two are with their grandparents, and they didn't want to take the baby because the baby is still nursing. Don't judge me. I let them naturally wean themselves. So today's video, I'm excited about this one because it comes in my DM a lot, right? We have toys out here. It comes in my DM a lot. And the biggest question that many of you have is, well, Destiny, my baby can successfully read the text. However, when I ask them what they read, that's where they struggle. So we know it's not a case of phonics. We know it's not a case of fluency. What do I do? So the first thing I'm going to recommend is that number one, that's right, Nova. Number one, you want to make sure that they have a strong grasp on vocabulary. The reason that you want to make sure that they have a strong grasp on vocabulary is because if they don't, when they come to those words and they're reading, even if they understand it, if they come to a word that makes absolutely no sense to them, then they'll just breeze over that word. They won't try to use any vocabulary strategies to figure that word out. And so they'll just keep reading and reading and reading and not having any meaning, okay? So that's step number one. Make sure that they have vocabulary in order. Now, you can help them with this. The best way to help them with this is you kind of have to do some pre-work first. You must take the text, read it ahead of time. Once you read it ahead of time, you do the pre-work for them and you pull out the words that you know they will not know. There's not enough clues for them to figure them out. And then you tell them what those words are. That greatly reduces the stress that they feel because now they can spend their time like, oh, I saw the word precipitation. So I know what that word means and I don't have to try to figure that word out, okay? So that's step number one. Step number two, we kind of talked about it a little bit. Make sure you read the text ahead of time and figure out what is going to be confusing for them in terms of comprehension wise. So for example, if you know that the text is heavily related with, let's say it has big chunks of text, right? And it's separated by headings, and you're like, oh my gosh, they're going to need to know how to read those headings. You should pre-teach that first. Think about it. Why would you give it to them? You already know they can't comprehend it. Why would you give it to them and then expect them to understand it? It's not a magic bullet in the sky that's going to say, hey, open up when you see this text. It's going to make sense. You have to have some type of assistance for them, okay? So all that means is that you read it ahead of time. If it's talking about two things that are being compared, maybe you do a quick lesson on how to compare something that's alike and how something is different. If it's talking about problem and solution, maybe you need to show them how a problem is in the text and how the author solved it in a book that you've read before. If it's talking about a character and the character is rich in character traits and that's really heavy in the text and they're going to need that, talk about how to describe a character. And don't describe a character based on what a character looks like. Describe the character based on what that character does, what they say. That makes sense? Okay? The other thing is, so I hear that question in my head now because I can hear you guys saying, well, Destiny, how do I know what to teach? You're going to know what to teach because you're going to read it ahead of time, and then you want to think about what your child will need at this point, okay? So for example, if my baby is in second grade, I'm not going to be talking about text structure. I'm going to be talking about problem solution, that type of thing, okay? The other thing that you want to do, you also want to make sure that if you create questions, that you create questions ahead of time. I cannot tell you how many times that a parent has come to me and said, well, I created my question. I asked them questions when they read, and it's like, well, number one, did you read the text first? Number two, did you create questions that required them to use the text? Or is it simple questions like, did you like the book? What was your favorite character? Was it yes or no questions? So you want to create some questions that have substance in them, all right? The other thing is, and this, I think I'm probably going to have to do like a separate video on this, but I'll go ahead and drop it right here. The other thing is, understand that comprehension strategies can be used across books. However, as the text levels increase, you have to make sure they understand how to use those strategies with those tests. I hope that came out right. In other words, you shouldn't have to keep reteaching these strategies over and over again. You should say, hey, you remember when we talked about such and such? You remember when I showed you how a panda was different from an elephant? That's the same thing in this. Can you go show that for me? Okay, can you do that for me? Those are the type of conversations that you want to have, okay? Because if not, what's happening is they're going to be solely dependent upon you. And the best way for them to get better is for them to practice and practice and practice and practice and practice those strategies, all right? And I hear a lot of you saying, well, Destiny, I don't even know where to pull those strategies from. You can do a quick Google search and like comprehension strategies, and it will tell you, because there's so many people out here that do this same work. It's just kind of aligned to teachers, okay? You can do the same thing at home. I highly recommend you do that. And then once you do it, you say, okay, I'm just going to pick this one strategy and this is what we're going to work on this week. Or, oh, I got this book right here. Then this is what we're going to do with this book. Okay? Or this is what strategy we're going to do with this book. All right? Do not overcomplicate it. Let them practice, practice, practice. For me, if my baby was struggling with comprehension, we hadn't got there yet because we're still trying to get him to read words. But if he were to struggle with comprehension, or with my daughter, when she has a text that's too hard for her, the first thing you have to understand is that make sure that they have time to practice. I will pick one thing on one week, show them how to do it. Then you do it together on that next day. Then you let them practice on that following day, and you give them feedback. It's that simple, y'all. It's that simple. There's a ton of resources. I personally use readworks.org because I know those articles and passages are closely aligned to what they see on state tests. And you want them to have the opportunity to be able to practice everything that they do and see with you on similar text types, okay? So those are my tools or my tips or my tricks that I highly recommend you try. Remember, comprehension is something that is built over time, and that those strategies should be used with all types of tests. And I want to make it even more simplified for you. If you think about when you read an article or a book, I use the example one time I had to do something with my taxes and fill out an additional form. I could read the words, but I had to use the comprehension strategies to actually understand and make sense of what it is that I needed to do. So don't freak out that they can't comprehend. We all can't comprehend if we're given a hard text. Your job is to make sure that you give them the strategies and tools that they need. Happy reading. Keep me posted. And please don't forget to like this video and subscribe. I'll see you in the next video.